She let him sit at her table in a crowded cafe. She had no idea he was a millionaire. Single father. A cold gray afternoon cloaked New York City in a dull melancholy. Rain had come and gone, leaving the sidewalk slick and shimmering under the pale orange of late daylight. Street lamps flickered on ahead of schedule, casting long reflections in puddles as the city pulsed forward in weary rhythm. Nestled on a bustling corner near Union Square, a cozy cafe named Rustin and Rose offered a warm escape from the cold. Its fogged windows glowed faintly gold against the gray, flickering with the movement of candles on tables. Inside, the space was packed shoulder to shoulder with students typing frantically, business people on late Zoom calls, and couples nestled into booths. The air buzzed with overlapping conversations, the hiss of milk frutters, and the rich scent of espresso and cinnamon scones. In a back corner near the radiator, Anna sat quietly, curled over a battered sketchbook. She was in her early 20s, blonde hair twisted into a loose knot that had mostly unraveled. Her oversized sweater had a hole in the sleeve and was 3 winters past its prime. Her jeans were frayed at the knees, her boots damp from the walkover. A single half-drunk cappuccino sat cooling beside her, her only indulgence in days. She stared at the page where she had begun sketching a window opening onto a sky filled with light. Drawing was the only thing that still made sense. Bills were overdue. The attic apartment in Brooklyn was too cold. And since her last client ghosted her without payment, she had been living mostly on oatmeal and the occasional toast from the cafe staff who pied her. But in that moment, her hand moved steadily, building something she hoped might outlast the storm. Then the door chimed. A man stepped inside, tall and damp from the drizzle, his dark hair tled from the wind. Beside him stood a little girl, maybe 5, small and curly-haired, her hands pressed tight to her ears. She flinched at the noise. Her eyes darted around in panic. The man walked quickly to the counter. "End quote, excuse me, end quote," he said to the barista, his voice low, "End quote, burnt, end quote. End quote, is there any table open? My daughter, she and hashtag 39, yes getting overwhelmed, end quote," the barista offered a sympathetic shake of the head. End quote, sorry, not a seat left. We and hashtag 39, re-slammed, end quote, the girl trembled. Her eyes began to glisten. Anna had been watching quietly. She closed her sketchbook, took a breath, then raised her hand. End quote, you can sit here, end quote, she said gently. End quote, they're in hashtag 39, S room, end quote, the man turned toward her. Surprise flickered across his face. End quote, are you sure, end quote. Anna nodded. End quote, absolutely. She looks like she needs somewhere calm, end quote, he hesitated, then led his daughter to the open chairs. The girl curled into his side, still sniffling. Her hands stayed clenched in her coat sleeves. Anna reached into her canvas tote and pulled out a box of crayons, old, worn, with its label peeling off. She placed it gently on the table. End quote, would you like to draw something, end quote, she asked the girl. End quote, I always carry colors with me, end quote. The little one looked at her uncertainly. Then, with a slow nod, she reached out. Anna smiled and handed her a page from her sketchbook. End quote, what do you like to draw most, end quote, she asked softly. The girl whispered, end quote, butterflies, end quote, Anna lit up. End quote, then let in hashtag 39, yes make the prettiest butterfly in the whole cafe, end quote, she slipped a yellow crayon into the girl and hashtag 39, yes hand. The child hesitated, then leaned forward, tongue poking from the corner of her mouth as she pressed color to paper. Her hands still shook, but a quiet joy emerged in the movement. Jack, though Anna didn't and hashtag 39, yet know his name, watched silently, his eyes softening as he watched his daughter calm. His own shoulders began to lower from their protective stiffness. He exhaled quietly. A woman at the next table glanced over, wrinkling her nose. End quote, really, end quote, she said. End quote. You just going to let some stranger sit here, end quote, Anna kept her tone even. End quote, sometimes people don and hashtag 39, T need space. They need kindness, end quote, the woman rolled her eyes and turned away. The little girl giggled, a quiet musical sound. Anna beamed. Jack, still silent, pulled out his phone and discreetly snapped a picture, not to share but to keep. The image, a butterfly half-formed on paper, a child leaning into color, and a young woman with tired eyes and a healing heart offering joy without condition. Their eyes met. In his gaze, Anna saw something unspoken. Gratitude, maybe wonder, certainly depth. She gave a small nod, cheeks warming, and looked back down at the butterfly. They continued in silence, a rhythm forming between them. Draw, smile, breathe. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sky was still overcast, but a soft orange halo had begun to form over the skyline. In the crowded blur of cafe noise, one quiet table had found its own world. A butterfly took shape in crayon wings. A child began to hum. And a story had just begun. The rain had stopped, but the wind had picked up. As Anna stepped out of the cafe, the sharp air cut through her thin coat like needles. The sidewalks glistened, lit only by the occasional flicker of street lamps. Her boots splashed quietly through shallow puddles, her mind still lingering on the girl with the butterfly and the man with the kind eyes. She pulled her coat tighter and walked faster. Then came the sound footsteps behind her. Anna and hashtag 39's heart skipped. She turned her head slightly, pretending to glance at the shop windows. There was no one close, but the echo of hurried steps persisted, growing louder. Her breath quickened. She picked up her pace. So did the steps behind her. A cold wave of fear surged through her chest. Her hand gripped the strap of her bag, knuckles white. She turned a corner, heart hammering. She could feel it, that sensation, that primal alarm, the unmistakable feeling of being followed. Without thinking, she broke into a run. She barely made it half a block before crashing into someone. Hard. Whoa. Hey, a familiar voice exclaimed as steady hands caught her shoulders. Anna looked up, gasping. It was Jack. She blinked, heart racing, her breath fogged in the cold air. I thought someone was following me. She stammered, her voice trembling. Jack and hashtag 39's brow furrowed as he scanned the street behind her, instinctively stepping a bit in front of her. End quote, you and hashtag 39, shaking, end quote, he said quietly. End quote, let me walk you home just in case, end quote, she hesitated. Her walls were up. But the sincerity in his voice and the steady calm in his eyes melted a small part of her fear. She nodded slowly. End quote. All right, end quote, they walked side by side through the quiet streets, the city noise fading behind them. After a few minutes, Jack broke the silence. You looked like you were drawing something important back there. Anna gave a small, tired laugh. I guess it and hashtag 39, guess how I stay sane. I lost my last art contract 3 months ago. Been rejected by 3 galleries, so now I just draw so I don and hashtag 39, lose my mind. Jack glanced sideways but said nothing. He listened. End quote, I and hashtag 39, am behind on rent, end quote. She continued, voice barely above a whisper. End quote, no one and hashtag 39, buying art from someone like me. And yet, I still draw. Butterflies, windows, light. I don and hashtag 39, even know why anymore, end quote, because it matters, end quote, he said simply. She looked up at him. End quote, I and hashtag 39, seen people give up, end quote, he added. End quote, but you Haven and hashtag 39, T, end quote, that means something, end quote. They stopped at the base of a narrow staircase leading up to a weathered building, her home. End quote, thank you, end quote. She said, her voice softer now. End quote, for walking me, and for letting your daughter draw with me, end quote. She reminded me why I started painting, end quote. Jack nodded. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small card. He held it out to her. End quote, in case you ever need anything, end quote, he said, his tone gentle. End quote, even just a cup of coffee, end quote. She took the card and glanced down. Just a name, Jack. No title, no company, no phone number. She looked back up at him, confused, but he was already stepping away. End quote, good night, Anna, end quote, he said with a faint smile. End quote, take care, end quote. She stood there for a long moment, watching him disappear into the foggy night. In her hand, the nameless card felt heavier than it should have, not because of what it revealed, but because of what it didn't, and hashtag 39, T, and deep down she knew this wasn't and hashtag 39, T the last time their paths would cross. The week slipped by like water through Anna and hashtag 39's fingers. She spent most of her days at her windowside desk hunched over her sketchbook with her fingers stained in pastels and ink. Butterflies always butterfly. They spilled across her pages like tiny fragile prayers. But beauty could not pay the bills. The heating in her small attic apartment had started to rattle again, coughing weak warmth into the space. She bundled herself in mismatched layers, trying to focus on a new piece, but the scratch of her pencil was interrupted by a knock on the door. It was sharp, precise. She didn't and hashtag 39, T need to open it to know who it was. Mrs. Brewster. Anna inhaled deeply and turned the knob. The landau stood in the hallway, arms crossed, lips pursed into a tight line, her thin eyebrows arched in perpetual disapproval. End quote, you know what day it is, end quote, she said without greeting. End quote, I do, end quote. Anna replied, clutching the edge of the door. End quote, I need a little more time, end quote. Mrs. Brewster and hashtag 39's expression did not change. End quote, rent was due last Friday. I and hashtag 39, V been generous, but this ISN and hashtag 39, TA charity, end quote, I know, end quote, Anna said quickly. I have a gallery appointment today. If they accept my work, Mrs. Brewster cut her off. If that and hashtag 39, that's all I ever hear from you, I and hashtag 39, I'll give you until next Friday, but if I don and hashtag 39, T have the full amount by then, you and hashtag 39. Out. Understood? Anna swallowed. Understood. The door clicked shut behind the woman, and Anna leaned against it, exhaling slowly as her knees threatened to give way. Later that afternoon, she walked to the gallery, one she had visited months ago, one that had once given her hope. It was nestled between boutiques and wine bars, its white walls visible through tall glass windows. She held her sketchbook close to her chest as she stepped inside. The curator, an impeccably dressed woman with a sharp bob and heels that clicked like threats, greeted her with a glance. Anna spoke gently. Hi, I and hashtag 39, Anna Rivers. I came to submit my work for consideration. You were here before. The curator interrupted, eyes scanning her worn jacket and scuffed shoes. The girl with the butterflies. Anna nodded. The woman gave a tight smile. Look, art is for people who sell, not dreamers who scribble butterflies in coffee shops. Anna and hashtag 39. Lips parted, stunned by the cruelty in the woman and hashtag 39's tone. End quote, I and hashtag 39, am sorry, end quote, the curator added without a hint of sincerity. End quote, but we and hashtag 39, not interested, end quote, she turned on her heel and walked away. Anna stood frozen for a moment, then slowly turned and walked out. Back on the street, she wandered without aim. Her feet took her past familiar blocks, past a florist, a bookstore, and then the cafe. Rust and Rose. Through the foggy window, she saw the corner table where she and #39 D met Jack and Mia. It was empty now, sunlight catching on the wood, casting shadows that looked like wings. She stopped and stared for a long time, her breath misting the glass. A quiet smile touched her lips, but her eyes told another story, one of tiredness, of edges worn thin. That night, back in her apartment, the wind howled through the cracked window. Anna sat on her bed, surrounded by sketches. She reached for her wallet and counted the bills, barely enough for groceries, let alone rent. She heard footsteps. A knock followed. Anna opened the door. Mrs. Brewster stood there again, hands on her hips. Anna didn't and #39, wait this time. End quote, I and #39, am working on it, end quote, she said, her voice small. End quote, I just need one more week, please, end quote, the landlord at her, face unmoved. Next Friday, not a day more, and I won and #39, be knocking next time. I and #39, LL be changing the locks, end quote, she turned and walked off, heels echoing like a final warning. Anna stood there in the hallway, holding her breath. When she finally closed the door, it felt heavier than before, as if each slam of reality added another inch of weight. She looked around her tiny space, walls plastered with art, windows lined with dreams, and wondered if she would still be here to see them by the end of the week. On Monday morning, the world felt gray again, rain tapping softly on the thin glass window above Anna and #39's bed. She sat curled in a corner, a blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders, sipping weak instant coffee when her phone vibrated on the nightstand. It was an email from an address she did not recognize. The subject line read simply, end quote, we saw your art, end quote, the message was short, no signature, no name. Come by for a conversation. It listed an address, a gallery on the Upper West Side she had only ever passed by, but never dared to enter. Anna stared at the screen. Her first instinct was suspicion. A prank? A mistake? She clicked the sender and #39's info. Nothing more. She looked around her apartment. Bare walls, unfinished sketches, eviction notice taped to the fridge and then back at the phone. Maybe it was something. A few hours later, bundled in her least worn-out coat, she stood hesitantly in front of a glass-fronted gallery with gold-lettered signage. The Haven. Inside, the space was airy and gleaming, filled with natural light and elegant wooden frames. Her boots squeaked slightly on the polished floor as she entered. The receptionist, a young woman with a kind smile and sharp blazer, stood as she approached. Anna Rivers? Anna blinked. Yes. We and #39, been expecting you right this way. Expecting her. Anna followed the woman down a quiet hallway lined with soft lighting and muted artwork. At the end of the corridor was a room with double glass doors. The receptionist opened them gently. Please, end quote, she said, gesturing inside. Anna stepped in and froze. There, standing with his hands in his pockets and a soft smile on his face was Jack. He wasn't an #39, in the cafe sweater and jeans, she remembered. Today, he wore a navy blazer over a crisp shirt, sleeves rolled casually at the cuffs. Behind him, the gallery wall was lined with sketches of butterflies. Different styles, different mediums, some bold and colorful, others delicate and haunting. They were hers. Her butterflies. She turned to him, stunned. You. Jack nodded, stepping closer. I fund exhibitions, he said calmly, under a foundation I manage for emerging artists. I saw what you drew. I saw how you gave a frightened little girl colors before you asked questions. He gestured toward the art behind him. I had the cafe retrieve what you left on the table. I asked them to watch for you in case you ever came back. I hoped you would. Anna and hashtag 39's voice was barely a whisper. You and hashtag 39, the one who emailed me. He nodded. I wanted you to come without expectation, without fear, just curiosity. She looked again at the sketches. Her hands trembled. Why me? Jack and hashtag 39's eyes were kind, unwavering. End quote, because your art speaks, end quote, he said. End quote, it heals like you did for Mia. You saw a child in distress and offered crayons, not questions. The world needs more of that, end quote. Anna felt the breath catch in her chest. He continued, voice gentle. End quote. I want to sponsor your first solo show. Full backing, venue, materials, everything. No strings, just your work, just you, end quote. Tears welled in her eyes, unexpected and overwhelming. End quote, Jack, I and hashtag 39, am not I and hashtag 39, am not anyone. I and hashtag 39, been turned away from every gallery I and hashtag 39, tried. I can and hashtag 39, even pay rent next week, end quote, then let and hashtag 39, change that, end quote, he said simply. He stepped forward and handed her a small folder. Inside was a contract, short, clear, fair. She looked up at him, voice shaking. End quote, I Don and hashtag 39, know what to say, end quote, say yes, end quote, he replied. Anna nodded, swallowing hard. Then almost shyly, she said, end quote, you never told me your last name, end quote, Jack chuckled softly. End quote, Chambers, end quote, her eyes widened. End quote, that name, end quote, she and hashtag 39, seen it in articles on gallery plaques. End quote. Jack Chambers, founder of the Chambers Arts Foundation, a man who once paid a six-figure sum to preserve a street artist mural in Brooklyn, end quote, she covered her mouth with her hand. End quote, you and hashtag 39, that Jack, end quote, he smiled modestly. Still just me as dad. And then softer and maybe someone who believes in butterflies. The days leading up to the exhibit blurred into long hours of sketching, painting, wiping tears, and restarting again. Anna poured herself into the canvases as though every emotion she had bottled up for years now demanded to be seen. Her small studio smelled of turpentine and old coffee. He worked barefoot. Her clothes smeared with streaks of cobalt and ochre. Each canvas became a confession, a release. Her butterflies no longer floated timidly in corners. They soared, wings wide, across vast, bright skies. Jack visited often. He never stayed too long, never hovered. He would bring her coffee from the cafe and sit quietly watching her work, sometimes offering a smile, sometimes just presence. One afternoon, as gray clouds rolled in and rain began to lash the windows, Anna stepped outside to bring in her drying sketches, but a gust of wind caught one off the line, a delicate watercolor, still damp, and sent it tumbling into the puddles. She cried out, chasing it. But by the time she reached it, the edges were already darkening with water. Jack appeared beside her almost instantly. He did not say a word. Instead, he removed the scarf from around his neck, a deep green wool that still held his warmth, and gently dabbed the water off the page. His hands were slow, careful, reverent, like he was tending to something sacred. Anna watched, heart full and throat tight. She whispered, end quote, you didn't and hashtag 39, have to, end quote, I wanted to, end quote, he said simply. End quote, it should have been enough, this quiet rhythm they had found. But not everyone celebrated her rising. The week of the exhibit, whispers began to circulate online. An anonymous account from a gallery she and #39D once begged for an internship had posted a scathing message. From barista to exhibit, darling, overnight. All it takes is a story and the right man to believe it. Anna froze when she read it. Then more followed, claims that she had played the victim, used her poverty as performance, that she had manipulated her way into success. It felt like someone had reached inside her chest and squeezed her heart until it cracked. That night, she sat on the cold floor of her studio, her hands stained with paint, her breath shallow. She whispered to herself, and quote, maybe they and #39, rewrite. Maybe I Don and #39T belong in any gallery. Maybe this was just a mistake, end quote. The knock came softly. Jack stepped inside without speaking. He didn't and #39T ask what happened. He had already seen the posts. He knelt beside her and without saying a word handed her a folded piece of paper. It was a letter written in a child and #39's uneven scroll. Thank you for the butterflies. They helped me sleep again. And Anna clutched the letter to her chest. Then Jack sat beside her and placed a hand on her shoulder. End quote, let them say what they want, Anna, end quote, he said gently. End quote, the truth does not need to shout. It just needs to stand, end quote. He looked into her eyes, steady and calm. And you? You stood for kindness when no one was watching. That and #39's a light no rumor can ever dim. Tears spilled down her cheeks. But this time she let them fall. Not from defeat, but from knowing someone had seen her, truly seen her, and still believed. The evening of the exhibition was quiet perfection. Guests flowed through the gallery and #39's pristine space, walls dressed in creamy white, gentle spotlights tracing Anna and #39's paintings with golden halos. Bottles of champagne shimmered on sleek tables at the edges of the room. But the heart of the event was the art everywhere. Anna and #39's butterflies, each stroke of color and tremor of line, hovered between wonder and fragility. Anna, in a simple navy dress and ankle boots, stood at the center of it all. She spoke softly to visitors, her voice firm yet warm. She described how each butterfly began as a memory of hope, how art had become her lifeline. Over shoulders, she could feel the gaze of Jack standing a few paces back. He wore a charcoal suit, opened white shirt. His eyes were bright, his expression a mixture of pride and protection. Hours passed in a blur of conversation and admiration. As the gathering thinned, Anna felt a rush of gratitude and relief. She wasn't an #39T alone anymore. Then, just before Anna took a moment to breathe, the gallery doors opened quietly, and there she was, Mia, glowing in a simple white dress that shimmered like moonlight. In her small hand, she carried her battered box of crayons, the one Anna had given her weeks ago. Anna and #39's breath stalled. The gallery seemed to hush. Mia withdrew the crowd and approached her. She stared at Anna with wide eyes, then wrapped her arms around her waist. End quote, can I draw another butterfly next to yours? End quote. She asked, voice small but steady. Anna knelt, tears glimmering. She nodded, her voice catching. Yes, darling. Right here. She guided Mia to a small easel fitted beside one of her larger canvases, a canvas of layered blues and golds, a butterfly emerging from darkness. Anna stepped back and offered the child a pink crayon. Mia crouched on a stool. Gently, she began to draw. Soft lines curved and connected until a small, radiant butterfly appeared beside Anna and #39's own creation. A hush fell over the remaining guests. An unspoken moment of beauty, of continuity. Jack watched from across the room. His chest rose and fell slowly, his gaze fixed. Pride welled in him, but so did joy and relief. He stepped forward, careful not to disturb the scene. He offered Anna his hand, a quiet invitation to join him. She took it after a heartbeat, warmth spreading through her fingers. Anna and Jack walked together, eyes fixed on Mia and #39's drawing, hearts tethered by hope. Later, after the crowd had gone, and only soft music hummed through the halls, Jack led Anna back to where her paintings hung. He turned to her, voice low but certain. "End quote, you gave me a hope," end quote, he said. "End quote, you gave all of us a reason to see beauty again," end quote, Anna swallowed. "End quote, I did not do this alone," end quote, he smiled, reaching into his pocket. A small velvet box appeared, and he opened it to reveal a delicate necklace, a tiny silver butterfly suspended in mid-flight. End quote. "I want this to remind you," end quote, he said, placing it around her neck, end quote, "that your art will always inspire, but more than that, that kindness changes lives," end quote, Anna and #39's fingers touched the pendant, her eyes glistening with tears of gratitude, end quote. Jack continued softly, end quote, "I love you, Anna, and not for the pictures, but for the courage behind them," end quote. She leaned into him, heart full. Below them, on the walls and on the tiny canvas, butterflies fluttered on, their wings now painting a new story, a story of healing, of family, of love. The days after the exhibition moved in quiet, gentle rhythms. Anna found herself spending more time with Jack and Mia. What began as casual coffees and strolls became a routine. Saturday mornings filled with finger painting. Weekday evenings filled with shared tea and laughter. Jack often stopped by her studio with her favorite croissant while Anna slipped whimsical sketches into Mia and #39's bedtime books. Strangers sometimes mistook them for a family. One rainy afternoon, Jack suggested they stop by a quiet riverside cafe. Inside, the lights were dim, the windows foggy. Jazz played low in the background as they settled into a corner booth. Anna, wrapped in her old sweater, took the window seat. Mia sat between them, pink-shaked and warm. Condensation fogged the glass, and Jack handed me a napkin. She giggled, then pulled out a marker from Anna and #39's tote. With careful strokes, she drew butterflies, a little house, and then spontaneously a heart. Inside it, in crooked letters, she wrote, end quote, "Anna plus Daddy," end quote, Anna and #39's breath caught mid-sip. Her cheeks flushed. Jack saw it, too, and chuckled softly. End quote, "She might be onto something," end quote, he said, his voice light. Mia looked up proudly. "It and #39's your heart family like in the book. People who belong together even if they didn't and #39's start that way." Anna felt a tremble in her chest. Joy and fear tangled. Later that evening, after Mia had fallen asleep in the car and Jack had driven them home, he walked Anna to her stoop. Rain misted gently around them. Anna and #39's voice was small. "Sometimes I feel like this is too good. Like if I breathe too hard, it might vanish." Jack stepped closer. End quote, "You think this is a dream," end quote, she nodded. "I lost everything once. When the gallery turned me down, when I couldn't and #39's pay rent, I started thinking maybe I wasn't and #39's meant for anything lasting. Not love, not even art." He took her hand gently. End quote, "Anna, what you gave Mia that day in the cafe wasn't and #39's just crayons. You gave her calm when I couldn't and #39's. You gave her color when everything felt gray." He paused, voice soft but sure. "You saved her. That doesn't and #39's disappear." Her eyes welled. "But I and #39 am still scared." "Then be scared," Jack said, his grip firm. "But be scared with me. Because I and hashtag 39 am not going anywhere. She looked up, searching his face for doubt. There was none, only steady warmth. I want this, she whispered. But I Don and hashtag 39, T know how to be someone and hashtag 39, S home. You already are, end quote, he said gently. End quote, to her and to me, end quote, he leaned in and kissed her, quiet, certain. A promise, not a question. Back inside the cafe, the heart Mia had drawn still faintly clung to the window. Rain blurred its edges, but the mark remained, just like them. And for the first time in years, Anna let herself believe in something lasting, something painted in rain and love. A year had passed, and the seasons of Anna and hashtag 39's life had changed completely. She now stood at the front of a sunlit classroom in a community center nestled in Brooklyn. The walls were splashed with murals and drying paper butterflies, and the floor was speckled with dots of paint. Laughter echoed through the space. A chorus of children gathered around wooden tables, their hands sticky with glue and joy. Anna and hashtag 39's heart felt fuller than she and hashtag 39d ever known. Once a week, she hosted a free art class for underprivileged kids. Some dealing with anxiety, others from broken homes, all of them searching for expression. She guided their hands, taught them color theory and imagination, but more importantly, she taught them safety, kindness, and the courage to create. She was now the artistic director of a nonprofit arts foundation for children funded entirely by Jack and hashtag 39's charitable wing. But more than the job, more than the studio and the respect, what Anna cherished most were the two people who made her life complete. Jack and Mia. They were no longer visitors in her world. They were her world. That afternoon, the class was winding down when Mia entered the room, dressed in her favorite purple overalls, cheeks flushed with excitement. She carried a medium-sized picture frame wrapped in brown paper and tied with a string. Anna smiled and knelt down. What do you have there, love? Mia handed her the frame with wide eyes. Open it. Anna untied the string and flipped the frame. Inside was a blank white canvas, completely untouched. Confused, she turned it over again. On the back in Jack and hashtag 39's handwriting were the words, end quote, will you be our forever art, end quote. Anna blinked, breath-catching. When she looked up, Jack was already stepping forward through the classroom door. Dressed simply in a blue shirt and slacks, he was holding a small velvet box in his hand. He came to her slowly, then knelt beside Mia, the box held gently between his fingers. End quote, you healed her, Anna, end quote, he said, voice rich with emotion. End quote, you healed me. You showed us how to color outside the lines and still find beauty. You gave us a story when we didn't and hashtag 39t know how to begin a new one, end quote. He opened the box, revealing a delicate ring, its center, a small sapphire framed in soft, swirling gold. Simple, elegant, like her. End quote, will you paint this life with us, end quote, he asked. End quote, forever, end quote, Anna could hardly speak. The room faded around her, children watching quietly, sunlight streaming through the window, the sound of her own heartbeat filling her ears. She dropped to her knees, tears brimming. End quote, yes, end quote, she whispered 1,000 times. End quote, yes, end quote. Mia squealed and wrapped her arms around them both. Jack pulled them into a tight embrace, laughter and tears mingling in the afternoon light. Later that evening, after the center had closed and the classroom was quiet, Anna picked up her paintbrush on the largest canvas she had ever owned. She began a new painting, not of butterflies, but of something even more precious. A little girl with curly hair, her eyes full of wonder. A tall man, strong and soft, his hand resting protectively on her shoulder. And beside them, a woman with golden hair, her hand outstretched, holding a paintbrush, not to draw what had been, but to shape what could be, a family. And underneath, in Anna and hashtag 39's careful script, she wrote the title, The Painting That Never Dried. Because love, like art, is never truly finished. It grows. It softens. It waits and it lives on in every brushstroke of kindness. Kindness is never just a moment. It becomes a masterpiece. If this story moved your heart, even just a little, imagine how many more are waiting to be discovered. At Soul-Stirring Stories, we believe in the power of small kindnesses, quiet courage, and the moments that rewrite lives. If you found hope in Anna and hashtag 39's journey and felt the warmth of a love painted in silence and color, there is so much more to come. Subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories now. Join a community that celebrates resilience, compassion, and the beauty of the human spirit. New heartwarming tales are shared each week, crafted to touch your soul, and remind you that even the smallest act of kindness can become someone in hashtag 39's masterpiece. Hit that subscribe button and let us keep your heart inspired.